So I'm joined by Tal Stokes, the founding member of the Jamaica Bobsleigh team. Of course, we know his story immortalised by the film Cool Runnings. Four-time Olympian, I'm sure he has a lot to share with us today. Tal Stokes, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mary.
I'm going to ask, how are you doing? And set the scene, because this is radio, but I can see you. Set the scene of the outfit, everything.
Yeah, no, I'm doing very well. I have on this retro Jamaica national team tracksuit top from the 1980s.
Yeah.
So it's one of my favorites, and I've always gotten compliments on it whenever I've worn it. And of course, you see the background, the famous or infamous image of the strongest neck in Calgary, bearing that bobsled around the corner. So yeah.
I have to take us back. We're going back to 1988, I believe. A lot of us will know the story from the film. We know the Disneyfied version of it, but many people from my generation were not around to actually witness what happened at the Winter Olympics for your team, the bobsleigh team. The video is on YouTube. People can go and check it out. It actually makes your heart stop. And I don't know how you guys just got up and walked out. But do you want to take us back to where your journey started? I know that you were a pilot. You had amazing hand-eye coordination and you had an interest in athletics as well. How did that lead you to founding Jamaica's first bobsleigh team?
Well, you know, my hand-eye coordination was good enough to be a pilot. I'm not sure I'd call it amazing, but
you could fly a plane enough. It was
yes, I did do that. But so the bobsleigh team, like it has an unbelievable sort of genesis, how it started. So in Jamaica, there were two Americans actually, one working for the US Embassy, one married to a Jamaican and living there. And they were friends, and they started talking about things to do. Now, the one who was married to a Jamaican, a guy named William Maloney, was a guy, a bucket list guy, still a good friend of mine, and he just has things that he likes to do. And one of the things on his bucket list back in '88 was to walk in the opening ceremonies of an Olympic Games.
Okay.
And he was looking for ways to do that. He had gone to the head of the Jamaica Olympic Association, who had told him, if you can find a sport we don't already do, if you can get yourself accredited to the International Federation, get a competitive team, then I'll support you to go to the Olympics. Now, of course, the head of the GOA thought that you know, it would never happen.
Yeah.
And William looked around. There was nothing, you know, Jamaica is a very, very vibrant summer Olympic Games program. So there was no room there. And then he and George Fitch were in a bar one night, and on the TV in the bar was playing the pushcart derby, the event that had happened that day, and it just clicked to William and then to George that yes, this is bobsledding, and so that's how it started. Of course,
they had this light bulb moment. So they were aiming for like the Summer Olympics, but saw people pushing it. I thought, oh no, this is actually a sport already. But Jamaica had never been thought of or even competed in the Winter Olympics at all.
No, this was, you can imagine, there were some rum and cokes flowing freely. So that was the kind of thinking, you know, they were really brainstorming.
Yeah.
Anyway, they couldn't get any athletes once they had decided that. So they went to the army.
Yeah.
And the guy in charge of sports in the army was Ken Barnes, who is the father of John Barnes. And they said, Ken, we need some athletes to do this. And he said, yeah, this is an army type sport. Yeah, this works for us as well. And then he said, but we also need somebody to teach to drive the sled with some hand-eye coordination. And I played football for the army, so I knew Ken. And he said, yes, I have the guy for you. And so I was actually told to go.
Yeah.
And
did you have any choice in the matter?
Well, I was a captain and Ken Barnes was a colonel. So no. So I went. But when I went, I mean, I loved it. I like manipulating machinery and driving things. And when I discovered it could be driven, and so I became very interested.
Yeah.
And so We got together, we went off to Lake Placid in upstate New York. We slid around on the ice, much like you see in the movie Cool Runnings.
Mm.
And then in October, this was in September. So we were in September, we went for our first look at what it would be like. And in October, we went to actually start sliding. And we landed in Calgary on October 17th, and that's of 1987. If you go back in history, that's known as Black Monday. And that was a huge stock market crash.
Yeah.
Like your generation has probably become accustomed to markets bouncing all over the place, but this was like one of the first time that things actually unraveled, and there was no internet, very little TV, and so on. And we're flying in there, and George Fitch, who was funding the whole thing, he got on the plane a millionaire, and he got off the plane broke, and was unraveled and drove off in a rental car with all of us, left his briefcase on the roof, it disappeared. And he had nothing, no credit cards, no passport, nothing. That's how it started. And we got on the ice. So in bobsleigh, you start small, which is how you should do anything. So you start at a low start curves, and then you move up as you get better. And then you get to the top, and the whole world changes. And it's a completely different sport. But we survived those early times. We ended up having to sell T-shirts and autographs, literally to buy supper, because by now we're broke. There was talk of abandoning the program. But personally, I was hooked, and I said, no, we need to go for this. We need to do what we can. So we were 6 to a room.
Yeah. What was it that hooked you? Was it the thought of going to the Olympics, or was it just a kind of addiction to the sport, or just your mindset that is, if I've started something, I'm going to see it through?
And you hit on all the things there. So, as a Jamaican, I wanted to represent Jamaica. I think all Jamaicans from very young want to do that, but I didn't have the talent to quite go all the way in any area. And so I was 25 at the time. This was sort of a godsend to me. So here was a sport that I was in the very forefront now, and we were going. And I developed a real love for the sport, because if you think about bobsleigh in the context that it's like Formula One, but the engine is a combination of the human body and the force of gravity. So it's just an awesome thing to think that through gravity and power, you can get something that's highly engineered to these speeds, and then manipulate them down a track. That fascinated me, and still does.
I've got to say, from the outside, it is a fascinating sport, because I think the vast majority of people will never sit in a bobsleigh, will never try this or experience this, and even the speeds that you're going at. So you were kind of thrown into this sport and thrown into this world. Even the fact that it was on ice, of course, when you're in Jamaica, it's like a world away. Was there any moment where you thought, this is just so alien to me, and this is just so strange? And how did you kind of overcome that weird feeling?
So this is one of the things about me personally going into bobsleigh and the gifts, because I joined the army straight out of school as an 18-year-old. I was selected for officer training. I went to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. I spent numerous exercises outside in the snow and in ice. And then I went and learned to fly in Canada in some pretty severe weather as well. I had sort of a unique preparation as a Jamaican for this sport. You couldn't find two people in Jamaica with a similar background.
Yeah.
So I sort of knew what to expect. Having said that, it was still difficult, and a lot of people could not deal with it. Especially, just starting from scratch with no experience.
Yeah.
And the truth is, the only way to get people through was really to throw them in, try and support them, but also create enough pressure to see if they really had the conviction within themselves to go through it with it. And it took just a couple of days to find out if somebody would stay with the sport or not.
Yeah, and I've seen in an interview you said that when you kind of recruited people in, you gave them like 3 days training, and then that was it.
Yeah, and it was kind of like a boot camp. So we really hit people hard early, and the ones who it wasn't for them, they didn't stay around. Yeah. But you have to do that, and because it costs money. You go 6 weeks down the road, and you spend $10,000 on an athlete, and then they say, well, no, this is not for me. You need to settle those things early on, and then head out.
So you had this kind of journey, and like you said, financially it was a challenge as well, because you weren't receiving the same funding as athletes who were going to the Summer Olympics from Jamaica, maybe sprint or any other sport. So you had this challenge, but you finally made it to Calgary. And how was the reception when you got there? Because I know it was like a big fanfare over, Jamaica are here, and the music and the outfits. What was that actually like? Did you feel like a celebrity when you arrived?
Yes, so stepping out of arrivals was an incredible experience. I mean, the flash cameras were going off everywhere. It was just an explosion. You see anything clearly in the background, and the noise level was it was intense and sort of unexpected, because up until that point we didn't really know that we weren't sure at any point that we're actually going to go to the games. And then we finally pulled it together, and we got on the plane, and we had a good send off. We had a delegation, and everybody was saying, well, good luck. I'm sure people didn't think they'd ever see us again. When we arrived, it was crazy, and it was really rock star kind of thing.
And whilst all of this is going on, you're still staying focused, because you have to qualify and also compete. And so you had a few practice runs before the event that we all saw televised?
Yeah, well, bobsleigh is split into 2 and 4 man. So we actually went through a full 2-man race, which wasn't great. But what had happened is that we had started out the program with 2 2-man teams, and then in January of '88, as we were doing our final preparation, the driver of the other team left. He decided not to go, and that left 2 athletes with nothing to do. So the athletes came to me and said, we'd like to try the 4-man sled, because if we do that, then we all could compete in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, I'll talk to George and see. I'm prepared to try. So I spoke to George, and he said, all right, you try and put something together. So we got that sled, and we practiced it in Lake Placid. And we went to Calgary, not knowing whether we'd be able to do a 4-man. We didn't have a sled. We didn't have anything. We just had an idea.
Yeah.
And we had never raced in the 4-man. But we got to the Olympics, and they let us enter sled, which is another part of cool runners that's fairly accurate, because it was a real bucket that we found in a basement. But anyway, it was a sled.
Yeah.
So we set it, and we headed out. The first day of 4-man training, an athlete got injured, and my brother was standing there. He had come to watch the Calgary Olympics as a spectator.
Yeah.
And the coach said, had said to me earlier, why isn't he on the sled? Because he was a 100-meter runner, quite highly ranked in the world at the time. And I said, well, that's for next season. Anyway, this guy gets hurt, and the coach says to George Fitch, we need to get him in the Olympics. So, this is the last week of the Olympics. The entries had closed 3 months before. And in 3 hours, George Fitch had him accredited, and he was in the games. And the next day, he was on the sled. So when we went in the race, sort of 6 runs later, it was, completely new people who had no idea what we're doing.
That is incredible. And is it your little brother, your younger brother?
Yeah, 18 months younger.
I love that. I can just imagine you saying, come on, you have to step up. Now's your time. Imagine going to the Olympics
Yeah.
as a spectator and ending up actually competing. So we actually get to the point of the 4-man race. And did you feel that energy, or people weren't expecting a lot from you even going into it?
Oh no, we were not about expectations. It was just a huge roar all the time. And it became infectious. Eventually all the athletes were coming to us for autographs, even the athletes, because I'm sure that their family at home, saying,
Yeah.
if you see the Jamaicans get something, buy a pin, get an autograph.
Mm-hmm.
So all the guys competing for medals were, stopping us in the corner and say, can you sign this for me?
Yeah.
So it was a surreal kind of atmosphere. And, we were cheered off, even though really we weren't very good.
But there was just excitement, there was energy, and people, I guess, weren't focusing as much on the end result, more of Jamaica are here, you're making history, it's going to be interesting regardless. And you're going at incredible speeds. What is the top speeds that you're reaching when you're going on these races?
It differs from track to track. So some tracks are incredibly fast, and they would be close to 100 miles an hour, at some points even faster. On the Calgary track where we raced, 85 miles an hour was sort of the peak. So we actually crashed somewhere around 78 miles an hour, and that scene that you see.
That is really hard to even imagine, because I'm thinking when I'm driving, going 70 down the motorway, and I'm surrounded by safety of my car, and I'm still thinking I am in charge of this vehicle, and even though I've got a brake, I've got everything, you have this feeling of, oh my gosh, it's just extremely fast. Whilst you're there, your head's in a helmet, but you're still kind of out and open to the elements. You went round that bend, and as we all know, you crashed. What was going through your mind at that moment?
Well, several things. So, let me tell you that crash, from hitting my head the first time to the sled stopping, was 28 seconds. And I actually had to go back and time this, because it was like a lifetime in the sled. And my first reaction was, oh no, not in the Olympics. And then intense embarrassment at having come to this. Then I realized I had a real problem, because of the helmets that we had were not really bobsledding helmets. They were like motocross helmets, and they had a snout. Yeah. And between the snout and the rest of the crew really burrowing down in the sled, I was trapped against the front of the sled and couldn't get under, which is what the driver does in an Olympics. So my head was out. So I actually ended up having 7 crashes in terms of bashing your head. So after the second crash, the second bang, I realized that I wasn't going under the sled, and then I just had to relax. And as I was relaxing, watching the ice going by at high speed, and then the crash, you're over, you come to a corner, the gravity throws you up in the corner, and then you bang off, and you bang your head into the side of the wall. Yeah. And as this is going on, I realized that this is not really how it should be. And we need to do this thing better. And so I would say in the last 18 seconds, I planned my Olympic career and knew that we needed money, sponsorship. I said we needed equipment, we needed coaching, sliding.
So that you would be, if this were to happen in the future, or you could prevent this from happening.
No, I decided to go ahead. Yeah, that we were going to go ahead. We were going to become competitors and not comedians as we're being taken as now. And I sketched out in my mind just the basics of how this would be done. And then we went, of course, immediately to an ambulance to be checked out, because nobody could believe that we're alive.
This is incredible, because in this, you said you were sliding literally on the ice, watching the ice go by for 28 seconds, was it?
Yeah.
And for the last 18 seconds of it, you were already deciding, we're coming back in the future, we're going to do it properly, we're going to be athletes. But this is all happening whilst you're sliding on the ice.
Yes.
Did you not have any moment where you felt, I'm in huge danger, or maybe my teammates are in huge danger here? Or was it just that you had to surrender and let it go?
Yeah, but there's nothing I could do about that at that point. So, I remember some years later, I met a lady who came up to me and hugged me tightly, and she had tears in her eyes. And I mean, I've had lots of reactions, but this always strange. And so I said, good to meet you. And she said, I'm a neurosurgeon. And when I saw you go over, I was sure you're dead or a vegetable. And to see you standing here. So, it's lots of things happen in life, serendipity, that you don't really have control over, but you need to use them.
Yeah.
And be thankful for the opportunity that you have and try and exploit it as best you can.
And do you have any explanations why? Because all we can see is your heads in your helmets. Do you have any explanation, or did anyone have any explanation afterwards of why there wasn't any serious injuries, why nobody hurt their neck or their back?
No, I mean, people have theories. My personal theory is that I was extremely relaxed, so I wasn't really bearing, apart from the in the bang. So when you come down and your head hits the ice, then that is a moment when you really hurt. I mean, the first one was the worst, and then it got progressively less severe. But by being completely relaxed and rubbery, I had a sore neck for a couple of days, and it was remarkable. But my only explanation was the fact that I was very relaxed after that. Once I realized what was going on, I was very relaxed, and from being very relaxed, I could see quite plainly what needed to happen.
And so you finally, after 600 meters of the sled sliding along, it came to a stop. We see the medics slip over on the ice, and you decided to stand up and walk the rest of the track. Was that something that you spoke about, or it just naturally happened?
No, it just naturally happened. And if you watch the actual footage, you'll see they were on the sled. He was out in front, and then Mikey White was sort of beside the sled. The track workers were pushing it up, and then in the background you see my brother and I walking together, and we were actually talking about what I just thought about, getting it right, and about his situation being in school and so on, and different things. And so that's actually was the conversation.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So you'd already decided, and you did commit to your plan. You went on to compete at 3 future Winter Olympics.
Yeah. And
was it your mindset that really got you through each one of those and each new challenge?
Yeah. Yes, that is basically right. But of course, so you have your mindset, but then your plan and your execution grows and changes as you see things. And within 4 years of Calgary at Aberville, we were fairly competitive. We were competitive with the top American teams going into Aberville, and we went there and we didn't have a very good race for different reasons. And we were 24th in the 4-man solid performance, and nobody had any interest in that. So the only thing worse than crashing in an Olympics is to come 24th. Was my takeaway. Yeah. But things happened, macro things in the world that we had no control over. The Berlin Wall came down, and as a result of that, the company that built the sleds for the East Germans had to now start earning money. It became a private company. And we went to them and said, well, they came to us and said, buy our sleds. And we said to them, no, give us some sleds, and we'll do so well that everybody else would buy your sleds. And so we got some sleds from them on that basis. And we picked up a couple of very good athletes to add to our brother. So we had a really world-class start team. And then the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics used to be in the same year, but this was a big strain for the IOC and for the sponsors. So they decided to move the smaller games, the Winter Games, and they did that by having 2 in 2 years. So there was 92 Abbeville, 94 Lillehammer.
Wow.
So between Abbeville and Lillehammer, yes, we went from 24th, which is in the second seed and so on, to actually finishing 14th in the first seed, ahead of all American sleds, and 10th on 2 runs. And only because we had one set of runners which worked particularly well in a certain climatic condition, but not so well in other conditions, whereas other teams have runners for everything. And the first day was relatively warm. It was only -10. But we knew the cold was coming, but we didn't know if it was coming in time for the run and so on. So you had Jamaicans praying for -18 morning, and it was freezing. And we were happy, and away we went. And best finish by a Black athlete in bobsleigh in Olympic history up to now. So at the time, I thought it was a transient thing, but I thought I would do better, but I didn't. But then it's interesting that it's stood for all these years.
Yeah, and it wasn't just after you finished from the sport. It continued, and
yeah, so it continues to now. So that, in 2022 there are the Beijing Games, so we'll see.
It's incredible. And do you often, I mean, obviously with the actual event happening, but then with the film Cool Runnings coming out in 1993, that must have kind of put so much more attention and more of a spotlight on your sport and your achievements and the story and everything. How did it feel to watch the film, and did you think it kind of did justice to your story?
When I first saw the film, I was not impressed. And when it first came out, I saw it twice in quick succession. One in Jamaica when there was a premiere in Jamaica, and then the other time in Austria, where it was dubbed in German, where I was in Austria ahead of the Lillehammer Games. So the film was released in October 1993, and Lillehammer was in February 1994. So it was released right at the beginning of that season, which had some consequences that I'll tell you about a little later.
Okay.
But I did not enjoy the film. I was in a place where I was trying to be a competitor, and I just came out with the impression that it emphasized the comedic aspect of what we're doing. And I didn't watch the film for 10 years after 93 until my children were old enough to watch the film and understand what was going on. And they came and they looked at me wide-eyed and said, "Daddy, that was you." So I had to watch it again with them. And then I started to understand it. But what the film did in 93 is that it revitalized the interest in the Jamaica bobsleigh team. And that's what eventually got us the money to be able to go to Lillehammer, because our sponsorship had disappeared after 94. But the film was crazily popular. I mean, it was insane. And it really, the thing I appreciated at that time was that it opened a lot of doors, and so we're able to go ahead. Years later, I came to understand how Cool Runnings actually got made. I thought I knew, because I was involved in the interview extensively, conference calls and so on about the script and so on, and we're signing off on lots of things. But I didn't really understand how it got made. I know I was in Calgary in I think 89 in the winter or so, and I got a call that a producer named Dawn Steele was coming to Calgary to talk to me. And was a lady, small lady, Dawn Steele. I knew nothing about her. Said she was a producer. We spoke for 3 hours. She said, "Tell me what happened." Spoke for 3 hours. As you can tell, I tend to go on. So then I left. And so I left her. I forgot about it. The movie got made and so on. After Lilyhammer,
Mm.
I tried through various contacts and so on to get folk interested. And in doing a sequel, it just never took traction. Lots of things were said to me. The movie business is really strange.
Yeah.
They in the last few years, I am well, and I said since lockdown. At the beginning of lockdown, I hosted a live stream commentary on the movie. So people in their homes started the movie with their children and so on, and I was on YouTube just chatting away.
Yeah.
Right. So we did that. My children had organized it, and in doing all the research for that, I came again across this Dawn Steele, the producer, and so I read up on her, and she was the first female head of a major Hollywood studio.
Mm-hmm.
She did Flashdance, Top Gun.
Wow.
A host of good movies. Yeah. And they fired her. And when they fired her, by this time she said, enough of this, I'll start my own company. And she started the business. And Disney, Katzenberg was a friend of hers. Disney gave her 2 projects, and one of them was Cool Runnings. And it was the first movie that she did, and the only one she finished. She started a second one. She came down with a brain tumor and she died.
Oh my God.
Within a year. Yeah, I know that. I didn't know any of that for 2 decades of the 21st century. And I actually bought her autobiography and I read through it. But I now know that Cool Runnings only got made because of her, and that when she died, that went. And so it kind of stands as her legacy as well. It puts it in a different frame again for me.
Yeah.
And but you know, the movie was a huge risk, and it had changed hands a few times with different people, and nobody could see how they could make money out of 4 black guys on the ice.
Yeah.
And she saw it. So tip my hat for that.
Yeah.
So I am much more accommodated with Cool Runnings now than I was then.
When we have the context, we have the story, and like you said, you didn't watch it for 10 years and then coming back to it because your kids are, excited by it. And I have to say, I think every British Jamaican loves that film. It just feels like, it's portrayed something that so many people don't often see. And for a lot of non-Jamaican people, that's their reference to Jamaica. It's Bob Marley, it's Cool Runnings, it's Usain Bolt, and that's what we know. And I totally understand what you're saying is like the story was so much bigger than this kind of comedy that we saw. But I have to say, I've spent a lot of time in Namibia where I've taught, and I used to take a stack of DVDs so that the kids could watch films. And I took them everything, I thought they'd love Lion King. They don't like Lion King. I thought they'd love all of these like cartoons and Frozen and things. No, Cool Runnings is always the film that they will request to watch. They think it's hilarious, but they get the story as well. They get the adversity and they understand the context and, why would these people go to a Winter Olympics? They've never seen ice before. They've never done this before. I have to ask, is there anything in the film, that was close to your experience, with the lucky egg or your any of the songs that you guys would do before going on the track, or was it kind of interpreted?
Listen, this is a hard thing because the things that we do are cut and dried and happened in real time. Now you're going to make a movie that is an hour and 20 minutes running time and so on. You have to find a way to do it. So the 1, 2, 3 start thing and then the change in that slightly to choose yourself is actually a conflict of cultures that we had throughout all my entire career, because it was a case of combining the bobsleigh, not to put too fine a point on it, is a highly Germanic sport. It originated and is done on the spine of the Alps.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of German speaking people is great precision and great discipline to approach it and to do it. And you have to get Jamaicans into that frame of mind in a way that's sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to see what it is that go on, why it goes on, and then try and build it back.
Mm-hmm.
And they find that in the movie where, you know, there's the scene where they say, no, we can't do the Eins dry, but we can. But they know that you have to have a count, you have to have some precision.
Yeah.
So you work back into that, into your own context. So there were a lot of scenes like that. You know, there's a real story of my brother was actually in college, and when he came to watch the games, he should have gone back because he was on some kind of break, and he missed the week, and because of that, it set him back a semester. And my father was not amused, and so didn't fund him anymore. That happened.
Yeah.
And you could see it was portrayed in, you know, in a much more dramatic way.
Yeah.
But that's what writers, I guess, and people do, and people who understand how they have to spoke the commercial appeal. But one thing that happened with Cool Runnings is that it has legs. And as you found in Namibia, if you take a 5 or 6 year old now and you show them that, they becomes one of their favorite movies. And, you know, not many movies stand the test of time, especially if you think about where things were in 93 and where things are in 2020 in terms of racial relationships and so on. To have a movie that you can actually watch and say, all right, fine, you know, there's respect at every stage in this show. It was brilliantly done. Yeah,
I think that's well put. And like, the thing is, I don't know 1993. You know, this.
I figured, yeah.
I was born in 94, but you know, it's so interesting because it does just, you can watch it today and it still feels like relevant and you can still understand lots of it. And I think that's amazing. I have a couple of questions. I asked on Instagram, I say, guys, I'm talking to Tal Stokes. We've talked about a lot of them, you know, did the movie, you know, do your story justice. I think your story is actually a lot more interesting than, like you said, what we see in an hour and 20 minutes. And it's a story that spans a huge length of time, and I'm sure still impacts you today. But a lot of questions about dealing with adversity in general and being the underdog, but still kind of pushing through and still remaining focused on that ultimate goal. And do you think your experience in the army had a lot to do with that? Or do you think it's just a kind of athlete mindset? Because non-athletes are constantly in awe of athletes. And I think that, you know, even watching the Summer Olympics, the Winter Olympics, we can't believe how people get back up, how people continue.
No, that's a good point that I want you to hold on to, because I'm coming back to that. So, I mean, I had a progression all through my life of being in what I know to be high performance sort of scenarios. So, you know, I played football through school at every level. That was organized training, that was execution, and so on. I had some very good coaches. I had a football coach called Alty McCoy, who came out of a whole Jamaican system that was very focused. It's an excellent system for developing the person as well as the athlete. And Herb McKinley, who is a legendary Jamaican athlete, who was one of the first Jamaican Olympians to medal. And I think he medaled in his career. He won 200 and 400 meters, which I don't know if that's ever been done since. But Herb McKinley was a coach at my high school for track.
Yeah.
And he was my brother's direct coach, and I knew him. I mean, I saw him every day, spoke to him every day. There are always things. So I always grew up in that atmosphere. And that led into the army, which of course is forces you into far more focus. But I had a natural bent. That's one of the reasons why I joined up, among other things. But that cemented the attitudes, mindset, and an approach to life and doing things, which spilled over with me. Now, coming back to what you said from the Instagram question about people being in awe of athletes.
Yeah.
This is one of the things, the messages I'm carrying now and trying to get out is that everybody needs to see themselves as an athlete. Everybody, when you look in the mirror. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily physical things, but you need to understand that you need to live your life as an athlete exists. So if you're an Olympian and you commit to going to the next Olympic Games, you have immediately structured the next 4 years of your life. From that very moment, everything you do is going to have an impact on the games. And you need to consider, is this helping? Is it neutral? Is it hurting me? Okay. You have to get rid of everything that's hurting you. You have to think about the things that are neutral, whether really worth doing. And you have to focus on the things. You have to start in the time the races, night or day, or what the conditions are likely to be like, and so on. Starting that and hold that in your mind for the next 4 years, 2-3 times a day, focusing on it and making sure that you are aligned with that. Other people don't have to be as stringent, but if everybody can have that understanding that that's how you live. You can't afford to put down moments in time just hanging about, because they're not infinite. And you will arrive at a point and look back and wonder what went back there. And I've lived my life like that. And when I look back, I literally could not write a book about my life because it would run to volumes. When I look back on the different things that I've been involved in, it would run to volumes and volumes. But that's what happens when you bring purpose to the center of how you live. And then you'll be surprised how many things go away. The mental health, which is running amok. I think a lot of it related to two things, but one of them is just a lack of purpose in existing. People are just living from time to time, moment to moment, and we weren't evolved to live like that. So if that happens, then things start to go awry upstairs, and you create problems. And the other thing is your health. One of the crucial things that happened to me in 93, after we selected our team in the summer, we then hired a coach who was a maverick guy named Sam Walker, and he was sort of not wanted by the Canadian program, and he was knocking about. Well, he was a real maverick, but he introduced me to the concept that to compete with what he called the steroid monsters, which a lot of sportsmen were back in that day. What we're going to do is find out how the human body works, find out how we supercharge that with natural substances, and then through so that we can train to a very high level and then develop. And that worked for me. I was much faster at 36 than I was at 32. Really? And just 4 years on that. That really changed my life. But one of the things is that the individual as an athlete, you have to look to your health and your conditioning. And it's not about how you look or your weight or so on. If you eat right, you sleep right, and you get a sufficient amount of exercise, you will look right. You'll be at the right weight for you. You look right, but also your brain will function much better. If you get your gut functioning properly, digesting properly, what they call the gut microbiome. If you get that in the right balance, then the chemicals that your brain needs to function, many of them originate in your gut. They will be better prepared and transmitted and work in your brain. and you will actually feel better. Your brain is an organ in your body. You know, we tend to think of our brain as something special and exceptional because we have a concept of this is where thought occurs. But what the brain does, the brain is special in that the senses, your eyes, your nose, your ears are closely connected to it and so on. But there are other parts of your body and there are other brains in your body that science is now coming to understand that need taken care of. But if the individual sees themselves as an athlete, you know, whether you're a construction worker, you're a radio presenter, you're driving a cab or so on, you see yourself as an athlete and you prepare every day like that and you set your medium-term goals. You might have, you know, a quad is what we call it, which is the 4 years between games. You might have a quad to focus on, but you can create a time frame to focus in and you can see where you are at the end of that time frame.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can put together a life with what you have. Another message I have is that there are far more opportunities than we realize.
Yeah. And
the reason for that is that we're not really looking. We're not really focused on opportunities. We tend to, a lot of the messaging is around how hard things are and where things aren't good.
Yeah.
There are a lot more opportunities around, but one of the reasons we don't focus on them is because we're not in condition to take care of them. So I didn't know the Berlin Wall was going to come down and that I would have be in the fastest equipment that there was on the planet.
Yeah.
But I knew when I was in the slow pieces of equipment coming 30th and 35th, I knew that if you wanted to know, you know, a bobsleigh track slows down with each sled that goes down it. And then, you know, it slows down between runs. So everybody goes down for one run and then you come back, everybody goes down for the second run. My aim was that if you looked at my time on the timesheet, you could see how much the track slowed down in seconds, because that drive is going to be exactly the same. There'll be mistakes in it, but it'll be total consistent. And so I worked for consistency. And then once I was in a place where I could execute exactly as I wanted to, you started to fine tune about how you approach corners, how you do things better.
Yeah.
So when I got in a fast sled, boom, I was gone.
Yeah.
But only because I did the work. So you don't know when opportunity is coming, and you can't look for opportunity if you're not ready.
Preparation.
And aware.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So that's what I would say on that.
I think there's such good advice, and this I know from my generation there's so many people who feel like they're constantly trying to find their purpose and trying to find what their bigger meaning is and you know what they're set out to do. And I think it's not always going to be laid out plain and simple for you. You know, when you were a pilot or when you were in the army, you would never have even imagined, okay, in a few months' time I'm going to be preparing for the Winter Olympics. But it's that preparation, like you said, already treating yourself like an athlete, already living your life like an athlete. And I think that's really good advice, because a lot of us are scared to do that because we're scared of failure. But I think when you actually put it into the context of being an athlete, you are going to have times where you don't win. You are going to have times when you crash. You are going to have times when you don't get the funding or things don't get right. But you've had that moment of then looking around, grab my brother, looking around, we're selling t-shirts, whatever it is. And I think, yeah, you know, we've had the pandemic, people have had times where they felt really uncertain and there's been a huge wobble, but now we're getting back into things. And I hope, you know, people take a lot from this. I've definitely taken a lot from this.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tal. It's honestly, I want you to write the book. I want to read the volumes, and I want a film, you know, that is what happened after, you know, Cool Runnings and what was the rest of the story. But I'm glad, you know, we're getting snippets of it now. If people do want to keep up to date with what you're doing, I know you're doing a lot of kind of motivational speaking and like you said, little bits of reflecting on your journey. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Tal Stokes 360 live and that's on Twitter and Instagram.
Fabulous. I encourage people, drop Tal a DM and tell him I've woken up today with my preparation and my 4-year plan, my athletes plan, and everything. So yeah, thank you so much, Tal. It's been a pleasure.
I hope so. Thank you, Mary. Really nice talking to you. I appreciate it, and I love the perspective from 1994.
Yeah, exactly. We're coming from different sides, but we're still meeting here. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.